All right. Good morning. Hi, Lynn.
Hi, everybody.
It is so good to have you back again. I just love it. I get to see you pretty much once a month again. So I'm loving
Hmm.
that.
Hey, well, right back at you. And it's Delinda and I have fun conversations, and it's always an extra blessing when we get to invite other people in.
Absolutely. And we are so glad that you all are with us today. I am Delinda Lane, and I am the host of Faith in Action and our Tuesday live show every week. And this is where we share practical ways to live out our faith every day. And we love to just give you things to think about, maybe little tips on how to, make your life a little easier or a little better, or just to understand things. And that's this morning is all about. I don't know about all of you out there, but I know that for many years, I believed some stories that I just really thought were true. And until somebody pointed them out, it was like something I was just raised thinking that really weren't true at all. And I think I based a lot of my decisions and thoughts in my adult life based on that false information. So Lynn and I are going to be talking about that, those stories we tell ourselves and a little different. We talk a lot about the lies that we hear and that culture tells us about us. We're not worthy, but that's not really the same. Talking a little bit differently this morning. And Lynn, being our neuroscience nerd, is going to tell us all about that and how we've done that. So, Lynn, give us a little insight from your perspective. What does that mean when I'm talking about you know, limiting beliefs, things that we've been told or assumed? Sometimes I don't know if the words were ever said, but that we picked up maybe in a household and didn't really, we thought it was true and we lived our lives based on that.
Mhm. And there are some that we all share. The money is evil one is probably a good universal. And there are some that are just personal to us. And so let me share my own. And
Okay.
so as a kid, I was raised by two people who really did not know how to parent well. And my experience of them was that there were two types of attention. There was negative attention because my father used to physically abuse my brother, and then there was no attention. And so I quickly learned, hey, between the two, picking the no attention. I'm going to fly beneath the radar so people don't notice me. I'll do everything right, as far as I can. And then I will never get the negative attention. And that was a fine strategy for growing up. But what I took from that, so the misleading belief I created from that is that the people who are in charge of me are idiots. There's nobody who's out there advocating for me. I need to make it all, if it's going to happen, I need to make it happen on my own.
Mm.
And that was useful for the time when it was true. But I stopped investigating that, and that became a limiting self-belief that, okay, people who are in charge of me don't know what they're doing, they don't have my best interests at heart. I need to be my own advocate.
Mm.
And in correct doses, that's a fine strategy. But at the same time, it took me years to realize I never had a mentor in my business career.
Mm.
And part of that was I didn't think there was anybody who would have my best interests at heart and could be a mentor to me. So I never looked for one. And the other thing I did was I was always projecting like I don't need your help. I can figure it out myself. I can do it all myself. And let's face it, if your boss thinks that, your boss is not going to offer because the more you do, the less your boss has to do. So
Sure.
it became this cycle, and I would hear people talk about, oh, I had this wonderful mentor when I first got in the business, and I would think, well, geez, I never had a mentor, and then there was a little bit of, geez, why didn't I have a mentor? And then it became yes, my limiting self belief is that people who are in charge of me don't have my best interests at heart. So
Mm.
I am the only advocate I've got. And of course, that also meant that I had trouble asking for help because I thought it was my job to do everything. So that was because limiting beliefs, what I've seen is that they start out as something that feels really true. And you have enough experience to believe those things, to believe that message that those things are true. But we stop checking in on them and we outlive their usefulness. We're still telling ourselves the same thing. So it comes to a point where not only are they not useful, they can, they can retard your growth and prevent you from getting the things that you really want. There's a neuroscientist by the name of Donald Hebb who said, what fires together wires together, meaning the more often you think a particular thought, like the people who are in charge of me don't have my best interests at heart, then the deeper this goes, the more you believe it, the more you say it to yourself, the more you believe it. So every time we tell ourselves those negative stories, we believe them even more, which makes it hard to stop and say, what is really true?
I love that because I think it's important to start looking at that because I would venture to say that most everybody out there, probably there is at least one story from their background that they have believed and make decisions even still today on whether it's true or not. And so probably the first question would, or the first thing would be, what is that? And then asking the question, is that even true? And I remember we talked about something a number of years ago, actually, a whole process of, whether it's lies or whatever, asking, well, is this true? Well, not really. So, why are we thinking that? And then
Mm-hmm.
what do you do to turn that around? And excuse me, you mentioned money. And I think this is one that there's been a lot of limiting beliefs around that. Money is I mean, I heard it, money is the root of all evil. And, you shouldn't go for success. And if you make too much money, you're going to be every bad person or every rich person is a bad person. Like that is not true. That is so not true.
Mm-hmm.
Got so many people, and I would say women in general have, they have a very limited belief about money and their finances and are they worthy of it, because money's evil, right? Well, the Bible doesn't say that. It says the love of money is the root of all evil. Loving money above family, loving money above God. It's the love of the money, not money. Let's face it, we have to live in this society, this world. It takes money to live, pay the rent, pay the house payment, whatever it is. So, but if you've been raised in a culture, I guess would be a way to say that, or in your household, it might really hold you back from being successful because you really believe that story that money's really evil and you shouldn't get any of it. So,
Mm-hmm.
so what makes us think, what makes those negative things, Lynn, stay in our head? Why do we go to that negative place?
And from a neuroscience standpoint, our brains are automatically negative. We think negative thoughts far more often than we think positive thoughts. And my line has been people run away from pain faster than they run toward the things that they want. And the reason this is so is because of who we are, because of our species. Back in the days when we were in the jungle, our brain had one job, and that was to keep us alive. So our brain was constantly scanning the horizon, looking for physical and verbal risks and threats, and getting us out of the way. So our brain automatically looks for the negative so that we can survive. And once again, this was a great belief when we were all in the jungle. It doesn't serve us as well today. But as a species, we've not been able to get rid of that. This is still how, well, it's hundreds of thousands of years, this idea. And so it takes conscious effort to reframe that and move beyond it. Because, I call it, it's like negative beliefs are like digging a ditch. And every time you repeat them to yourselves or negative stories, it digs the ditch deeper. That's the fires together, wires together thing, which means that if you want to stop thinking those negative thoughts, then you need to dig a different ditch. You need to stop digging the one you're in and start digging a new one. And it's going to take a while for that one to get deeper than the original one you have. It takes a conscious effort to change negative beliefs. But when you see not only that they aren't serving you, but that they're actually hurting you, and it's the limiting part of limiting beliefs, that can be a real catalyst to deciding you're going to change.
Mm. Well, that makes a lot of sense. It's taken us how many years, whatever age you are, 30, 40, 50, whatever years. And that ditch is pretty wide. That rut is pretty deep right now.
Mhm.
One of the ones that I know for me, one of those stories was children should be seen and not heard. Very
Mhm.
much pervasive in the Southern culture. I don't really know about the Northern so much because I was raised in the Southern.
There was plenty of that here too. Yeah.
Excuse me. And it was, and again, for children, learning to behave and parents trying to make them into responsible, well-behaved children, that might make sense. But somehow that mindset stayed with me for so many years. And well, I know that that's part of the reason why I just basically kind of felt like I didn't have any choice. I didn't have a voice up until well into my, I don't know, 30s for sure. And it just,
Mhm.
kind of got better when I realized, oh, I actually do have a choice and I do have an opinion and I don't have to be quiet. I'm not a kid anymore.
Mhm.
But somehow the brain didn't navigate the change as I got older. It just kept with me. Children are supposed to be seen and not heard. Don't speak and they'll spoken to. And I think the other one, too, for me anyway, was that growing up in a strong faith household, the church in general, the religious part of the church, not Jesus, okay, but the religious institution of the church basically had women to be quiet. And we were not supposed to voice our opinion and those kind of things. And so, again, that whole thing together really held me back as far as realizing to who God created me to be. And I think
Mhm.
there may be a lot of women out there that have had some of those struggles as well. And so then for me, the change has been going back to the scripture. Okay, what does God really say?
Mhm.
Okay, then I'm going to take his word and not those other words that I heard growing up.
Mhm.
So,
Yeah, it's that pause of, gee, is this really true?
mhm.
And 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 frankly, when I first started playing around with this stuff, I literally sat down and thought, what are the lessons I learned as a kid that I have lived by? And I've already told you the story of one of them. And and then how does that make me feel? How does that make me act? And how does that serve me? And when I got to and how does that serve me? Because the feeling and the acting, it was really clear. But how does that serve me? And when I realized, no, these things aren't really true for me anymore. And I can let that one go. It's like you stop dragging a really heavy suitcase around with you because you don't need what's in it anymore.
Yeah, just let it go. I love that's a great illustration, the suitcase.
Mhm.
So,
Yeah, because it's a suitcase that doesn't have wheels on it either.
oh no, that's how you are really deep. So here are a couple of the stories y'all might think about because the question as when we come to the end of the show today, the thing we want to leave you with is start looking at that, like Lynn was just talking about. Look at the stories that you've believed and ask yourself those questions. And I love those, Lynn. How does it make me feel? How does it make you act? And does it serve you? That being the most important one. If it doesn't serve you, then let's replace it with something else, right?
Mhm.
So some of the stories that as I was just pondering over them could be that another one that I grew up with, I'm not going to explain it or anything, is that boys are better at math and science. So I believed that up until I got to college and I realized, you know what? I am pretty smart. Science was my best subject. Go figure.
Hmm.
I was shocked by that. I was like, how can that be? Girls aren't supposed to be able to do it. And you think that's such a dumb thought now. I mean, I don't think that's a pervasive in the culture now. But when we were growing up, it really was, right? Or it was for
Yeah.
me.
It,
Uh,
it's still there. It's not as visible as it used to be. But yeah, there are still many more men in science and math than there are women. And yeah, so it's not that you made this up, and it's not that it's gone now. It is less visible, we'll put it that way.
yeah, yeah. Another one is women in leadership. Well, men are supposed to be the CEOs. Men are better leaders than women. Well, again, duh, that is so not true.
Hmm.
But right, what you just said, I mean, the statistics are still heavy with men in leadership. It is,
Hmm.
it's been changing for the last, what, 40 years, but it takes a long time for our own selves and for us to believe ourselves that, yes, I can be a leader. God's calling me to be a leader. Why should I doubt that? And yet, a lot of it is too subconscious. Wouldn't you say, Lynn, that we don't even realize that we're thinking?
Right. Right. Yeah. Which is why sitting down and figuring out what your limiting beliefs are is a really useful exercise because there are some that are going on that you don't even pay attention to anymore. You so believe they're true that they've moved into your subconscious. And my line about this, the subconscious mind wants you to get what you want, but you literally have to tell it. And it can't tell the difference between a positive message and a negative message. So if you're thinking men make better leaders than women do, and you happen to be a woman, well, guess what? Your subconscious mind is not going to support you to do what you need to do to move into a leadership role because you've said men are better leaders than women. Your subconscious mind gives you what you ask it to do. So that's the real danger, I think, of limiting self-beliefs is we don't, number one, we don't know they're there. And number two, we don't know that that they keep generating the same outcome, even though we're not in that situation anymore.
Yeah, well, that is just so true. I mean, and I see it a lot, with the many women that I work with. One of the other ones is the one that you actually mentioned of you have to do everything yourself. You can't depend on anybody else. You've got to do it all yourself. Oh, here's a big one, ladies out there. Asking for help is weakness. That sort of got into yours as well. So
Mm-hmm.
we're not supposed to, and what women, we're supposed to do it all. We don't need any help, right? We are the super mom. And yeah, we are pretty super, but we really can't do it all. So,
Mm-hmm.
and it is not a weakness. And one for men that I think is very sad is that men are not supposed to cry. I mean,
Mm-hmm.
I heard that for forever. And men are becoming more open and more vulnerable, I think. But I think that's really sad for men who are just raised like, be a big boy, don't cry. Big boys don't cry, whatever. It's like, yeah, they get hurt. They have feelings. They have emotions.
Mm-hmm.
I think that one's a hard one to get over too. Are there?
Well, and it's funny that you should mention that one because I have this very clear memory of being about 5 years old and standing in the hallway in our house. And it was summertime because there was a box fan on the floor moving the air around. We didn't have AC. And there's my father standing in the hallway. And of course, yeah, he looked huge to me at that point. And he's wearing shorts and a white t-shirt. And he looks down at me and he says, never let people know how you feel. They'll use it against you.
Ah,
And, I'm four. I'm thinking 4 or 5. I'm thinking, well, the guy, he's my father. He knows what he's talking about. So that's what I should do. And it's true. As I grew up and learned about the environment that he grew up in, yes, that was exactly how he needed to operate to survive in that environment. But and my joke about myself became it's like the 7 second delay on radio because they broadcast radio 7 seconds after it actually happens so that they can edit out, originally so they could edit out curse words and other things. And so, so mine was something would happen and I would sit there and think for 7 seconds, well, what would a normal person feel? Because I was so disconnected with my feelings because I believed what my father had said.
ah,
And And to his dying day, pretty much he believed that too. I used to have to name emotions for him. Well, Dad, if I were in a situation like that, I'd feel angry. And then, once I identified it for him, he could talk about that. But, and let's face it, feelings are messy, and there are days when you just wish you didn't have any. But at the same time, when you don't, and I certainly learned this, when you suppress your feelings, they come out in hinky ways. And it's better to know what's going on and how you feel about it than shove them down and pretend you don't have any. And so, once again, that was actually a limiting belief that my father had, who passed it on to me. So,
Yeah.
this stuff happens in families all the time, too.
Mhm. Yeah, it really does. Uh, Another one that I see quite a bit is if I fail once, I'll fail again. That
Mhm.
thing, and maybe you had some failures or whatever as a young child. It's like, well, all I do, I just keep failing over and over. And so the more I say how much I fail, the more I'm going to fail, right?
Right. Yeah, you're digging that ditch even deeper. Yeah.
Like,
Yeah. Or
oh
or or
gosh.
failure is bad. It's
Yes, yes.
bad to fail. Yeah. And here's the irony, because neuroscience teaches us the best way to learn is to make a mistake. Because when you make a mistake, it's like, oh, well, I'm never doing that again. And you don't. It's a great way to learn. If we all did everything perfectly all of the time, there would be no learning.
Mhm.
Unfortunately, failure and mistakes are the best teacher for our brains, because, okay, well, that's that negative thing. I don't want that to happen again. Here's what I'm going to do instead.
Yes, and that I love that as well. Because you're right. Somebody said, and I think it's so true, is that if you're not failing on a regular basis, you're not doing anything.
Now you're not trying. Yeah.
You've got to do some things, and then, like you say, pick yourself back up and maybe try it a different way. Of course, I love all of the little stories about, for instance, Edison and the light bulb. I think he said, "Yeah, I learned 1,000 ways not to do it." You
Hmm.
know, because you're never gonna get. It takes trial and error on a lot of things, and
Hmm.
the growth that happens through that can be tremendous. So
Hmm.
yeah, you're right. That is one that I never actually thought about that until you just said it. Was that,
Hmm.
failure is bad. Don't, you're supposed to. And who in the world ever, except Jesus, ever did everything perfect the first time?
Hmm.
We just don't. We just don't. And so
Yeah.
take it in, and that whole perspective that of how we look at things. It doesn't have to be perfect. Um, I love our church actually has a saying that we want to be constantly in pursuit of better,
Mm-hmm.
not of perfect or even
Hmm.
of excellence, but always just being better, because we can all get better no matter who it is, right?
Hmm.
And so I really like that, the constant pursuit of better. So me,
Yeah, because you're absolutely right. When they've done studies of goal setting, when people set goals that are unattainable, I'm going to make $1 million this year, and you're unemployed. What that does is it actually disincents you from doing anything. Well, I'm never going to get there, and then you don't do anything. So the idea of setting a goal of being better is achievable. And then it's easier, it's better for you and your brain if you set a series of smaller goals and have a series of successes than if you set one big goal, and there's no way you can get there.
yeah, very, very true. So one of the things, as y'all are listening, and we're getting close to the top of our hour, I can't believe it again, um, is I want to leave you with this question of what story have you been telling yourself? Maybe it's some of these that we mentioned. It might be something we didn't even bring up. There's so many, and everybody comes from different backgrounds. So the story you believe, we might not have even touched on that yet today, but maybe it gave you some ideas of ways to think about it. And then I'll go back to Lynn on the question that she asked. So, what are they in the first place, right, Lynn? And
Mhm.
then how do they make me feel? How do they make me act? And what was the last one? How does it serve me?
Right. How does this serve me today?
Or does it?
Yeah. And usually, and a lot of times the answer is no, it doesn't. Or, it doesn't, it obviously doesn't serve me as well as it used to, but I've gotten this from it. So, so for me, it was I became a self-starter. My whole thing about I can't rely on anybody else. I need to do it myself. Well, that made me a self-starter, which helped me in business. But
Yeah.
what it prevented me from doing, and the cost became, I don't ask people to be my mentor. I don't ask people for help. And so then the opportunity becomes, okay, now that I know this, what can I do? And like many people, and it sounds like you would too, Delinda, I started asking for help. And it was uncomfortable, but I ask for help all the time now. And a lot of times I don't even have to ask for help. People will offer stuff.
Yes,
And and every time they do, it's like a little bit of magic for me. Oh, somebody noticed this about me and offered to do this or said this to me. And it's like this little miracle, this little gift.
it is. It is. And looking around, I just feel so blessed. I know I've said this before, but I feel so blessed that I do have those areas where I do need help. And God is so gracious. He's brought wonderful people in my life to come alongside. And when you
Mhm.
look at that, that is a gift. Like you, Lynn, are one of my gifts that God brought alongside.
Yeah,
And
ditto.
look at the people around you. I would say if these are encouraging, supportive people. They're not there by accident. So maybe they're helping you get over some of these stories that you might have believed in your past, and God's bringing them into your life to show you that no, you don't have to do it all yourself. It's not weak to ask for help. It is okay. So well, I'm so glad y'all were here with us and encourage you to really look at that. Take a little time. I know, you got to get to your next thing, whether you're watching right now live or whether you're watching later. But I don't know, start with 5 minutes and just start asking yourself that question. And now, Lynn, you can tell me why this. Once you start asking your brain that question, even when you walk off, it still kind of keeps going, doesn't it? Doesn't it try to
Right.
figure it out?
Right. Right. So that's the conscious mind and the subconscious mind. So the conscious mind can process 10 to 50 bits of information per second. The subconscious mind processes like 12 to 14 million bits of information per second. So once you ask your subconscious mind a question, you say, I'm interested in this. Or I wonder, what are some of the limiting beliefs I had as a kid? And then you walk away and do something else. Well, your subconscious mind starts chewing on this stuff. And then ideas will pop up seemingly out of nowhere. So I say use your entire brain as you investigate this. Ask yourself the question. And the answer might not be immediate, but your subconscious mind is working on it and it will give you plenty of stuff. It's once again, it's got access to information you don't know you have. Ask it the question. It's better than AI.
Because it's like our own AI in our head.
Mhm.
It is our so. Oh gosh. Well, Lynn, thank you so much for being here. As always, it's always such a treat. Thank all of you for being with us today. And remember that life's not a matter of chance, it's a matter of choice. So go out there and choose to look at those stories and see if they're helping you or harming you. Thanks so much. And we will see you next time. Take care, everybody.
Bye.